Let's go ahead and go over the mirroring process. So in the last clip, I left off by letting you finish creating the joints for the back repulsor, and you can kind of see my joint setup here. And of course, we went through the process, and of course, I've renamed the repulsor properly, so it now says back for all of these joints here. But you can see the joint setup I've established. Now, if you want to, you can always start off in this scene, and you can open up the exact same scene I'm working with within your project files to start off where I've left off here. Now what we need to do is actually mirror these joints across to the left side, because we know we need to have the exact same joint setup for the drones here on the left. Now we don't want to go through the process of creating all of these joints over again if we've already created them for the right side. So this is a very simple process. What we're going to do is select this front repulsor base joint, sort of the parent of all the other joints on this repulsor here. We'll go up here to Skeleton, Mirror Joints. We'll open up the option box, and we'll reset our settings just to make sure we're both working at the same settings here. And there's a couple things that we want to adjust here. We first want to adjust this search for and replace with. So we know that all of our repulsor joints start with R underscore for the right side. So what we need to do is search for that R underscore, and we need to replace that with L underscore for the left side. And then we also need to adjust the mirror across axis. We actually want to adjust this to the YZ axis to basically mirror this to the opposite side. And you can see the axis point on the bottom left side of our viewport to kind of get a sense of how you should be mirroring this across. So with it set to YZ now, let's go ahead and hit mirror. And there we go. So you can see that these joints have been mirrored across. And not only that, it's automatically searched for any R underscore and replace that with L underscore. So we don't have to rename our joints either. Let's actually go ahead and do that for this mid section. So we'll select it. We'll go to Skeleton, Mirror Joints. We actually don't need to open up the option box because we know we've already established the options that we need. So we'll mirror that across, and there we go. And then finally, we'll do it on this side. We'll go to Skeleton, Mirror Joints, and there we go. So all these joints again have been renamed properly, and we don't have to go through the process of creating those joints again, which really speeds up the rigging process for us. So now that we've done that, what we want to do now is parent all of these repulsor base joints to our root joint. Again, we want to make sure that when we move this root joint, all of the other joints are going to follow along with it. We'll select the repulsor base joint here. And with that selected, we'll shift select the root joint. We'll press P to parent. And there we go. So now the root is controlling that entire joint chain for that back repulsor. We'll do the same for this mid section. We'll select that repulsor base, shift select the root, press P to parent, and then we'll just repeat that here. Again, selecting the root, and there we go. And then we'll do that for this section. All right, and then for this repulsor base joint, selecting the root, pressing P to parent. And you can see that when we select that root, those joints are going to follow along. All right, and then we'll select finally the front repulsor for this left side, shift select the root joint, press P to parent, and there we go. We can test this out by selecting our root joint, and you can see that all of these joints are now properly following along with the root joint. So all those joints that we created are following along exactly how we want. And then of course, as we move down this chain, let's say for example, selecting the mid repulsor joint, we can still rotate that independently, which is exactly what we want. So with that, we've actually completed the process of creating all of the joints that we'll actually need in order to properly manipulate and animate this drone object. So we've kind of completed the bulk of what we need for the actual rig itself. We have all of the skeletal joints that we need. Now we need to go through the process of actually skinning or binding our drone geometry to the joints themselves. You can see if we select any one of these joints and move them around, the geometry is not going to follow along. And that's where the skinning process comes into play. We're actually going in there and we're binding the geometry to the joints so that if we move the joints, the geometry is going to follow along. So that's what we're going to do in the next clip.